Well, I am here as ever with Anne Lord Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good to see you. Good to be here.
A new backdrop. You're the first time for me doing this proper backdrop.
Woohoo! I know, very. I love your banner. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah, we that was a long time doing. We wanted something that was going to stand out. People could see. It's not much good if you can't see things, but yeah, we wanted something that was visual and lead you to look a little bit good because we're supposed to be media and all of that stuff. How are you doing? How's your week?
Yeah, good. Flown by it. I can't believe it's a week since we were last speaking.
And you're back from Miami. Are you back in the UK? Or are you still in Miami time? Or?
Yes, I think my sleep is back to normal, so that's really lovely. That's like, oh, phew. So, and then yeah, what happens during the day? I think it just depends on what happens during the day. But yeah, I can't. There's no excuse for jet lag for anything that I may or may not be getting up to during the day. But no, I feel as though I'm back on form, which is really lovely.
Good. Yeah, there's only so far. We went to Guernsey one time from the UK, and I'd worked a whole day, and then we had to get as my wife calls it, the catamaran. And I kept on trying to say there's no G that you pronounce. Anyway, so we sorted that, and they said, "I'm sorry, but the weather's really bad, so you need to take an earlier crossing." So we did, but I'd worked for a day, like since the early morning. Then we got to it was like 3 o'clock crossing or something. So I was feeling jet lag, having just gone to Guernsey. And I read up the symptoms and thought, this is jet lag because I hadn't slept and I was on a new day. And it's like, where did the sleep go? Which effectively one of the things that jet lag does, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was just tickled there, the fact that, yeah, Guernsey is like us in the Channel Islands. We're so far away. But no, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, lost to sleep. It just, anyway. What did we say we were going to talk about this week? I forgot. I know we talked about
Christmas, because we've only got 2 weeks to go.
Yes, Christmas. Now, before we get into Christmas, I was chatting with Laura from our Atlantic Roots about surfing. And I wanted to briefly touch on this because the Wave Project use surfing as therapy, but they say it's not a traditional therapy. It's not like, we talk to the children and, we help them through. It's the surfing itself, which is the therapy, because they call it cold water therapy. So what's going on in the senses, before we get to Christmas, what's going on with the surfing that can be so useful to people who've had issues integrating into society or being abused as children? What's going on with the surfing?
Wow, that is huge. Yeah, we have something here on the island as well that the organisation that I've been working with, because I think we should get some sensory super surfers because it is a brilliant experience. It is one of the best things about sensory integration. It has to be fun. It has to be part of everyday life. It shouldn't feel like any form of treatment as such. It should just be good and part and parcel of everybody's life. We can focus it so that it actually does help the body function better. That is the treatment side of it, but it shouldn't feel like a treatment. It should just feel like everyday life and something that we enjoy doing, because that's how the brain and the body heal themselves best. When there is the freedom to be and neural connections are made from a good place, and they're always good neural pathways that are then laid down, rather than the opposite, where neural pathways are laid down in stress or in trauma or in any other thing. And it's just like, no, we don't want those neural connections to stay. We want to replace them with some good connections. So surfing is one of those things, because it's so unpredictable is why I love it. But it's predictable enough so that it doesn't disturb those who are on the spectrum or who find a change is difficult. It's not that kind of unpredictability. It's just the fact that the sea is so unpredictable. But everything else is fairly constant. There's going to be wind. There's going to be sand. There's going to be water. The temperature of the water can change. But the way that the water moves is different. So when you are trying to get on a board, even that in itself is a massive motor planning thing, which is a big part of sensory processing. But the motivation is there for most individuals to at least want to get on a board, whether it be them lying flat, whether they manage to get up on their knees, whether they actually manage to stand, whatever they manage to do with it, there is at least a motivation, even if it's just someone hoiking you onto a board so that you can hold on for a couple of seconds. or whatever, and get that experience. So I really could take quite a long time to talk through it, but I'll take a few more moments if that's if you're up for that. I think you are, because vestibular proprioception and deep touch pressure, those are the three biggest things that I love any activity to have a good amount of, to help really regulate the senses. So if you can imagine, like, you're on a surfboard, you've got to get up there in the first place. So you've got your muscles, then you're holding on. And that's what proprioception is. Anything that involves your muscles and your joints is giving you really good proprioceptive input, which is a wonderful sense. So holding on to a board, trying to stand, linking with the vestibular system, which is part of your balance and your gravity, knowing which way up you are. So you are really trying to keep yourself still on a board or keep yourself on the board. So all of those muscles are really connecting with your vestibular system to keep yourself on there. The motivation's really high. It's like paddleboarding, but just on a higher level, because you've also got speed. So you've got speed going through the vestibular system, which is often a linear speed. So linear movement, anything that goes in a line, is going to stimulate certain vestibular receptors and not other ones. And they're really good. The ones that move in a line are also very organizing and very calming. So linear movement. Then when we get to the point where you maybe actually fall off the board, that's when you get rotation. That's when you get other parts of the vestibular system stimulated, which can be disorganizing, or it can be just really good fun. And some people need an awful lot of that kind of rough and tumble type head movement, which obviously you get in surfing too. And then you've got deep touch pressure. So if you manage to get a wetsuit on, then at least you have a consistency of the temperature of the water and the pressure of the suit against your skin. So you're not going to feel as though you're going to get touched unexpectedly, which is really dysregulating for a lot of people. And that's why people don't like being in crowds often, why they don't like being milling around other people, why schools can be quite difficult, because you could just be bumped at any point quite unexpectedly. But you've got this full protection on, because most people don't go, at least in Britain anyway, surfing without a wetsuit. So yeah, I really could talk about it and dissect it for ages, but I'll stop for now.
Great. We can come back to that in the new year, perhaps. I was just amazed by the wipeout, this is new terminology for me. So wipeout is when you fall off and go into the water, when you fall off your board. But Laura was saying how good that is, because once you've done that, you're now part of a community, because you cannot be a surfer unless you fall off your board. Everybody does. So falling off your board, the wipeout, actually, although that's a failure, that's actually admittance into community at the same time, which is another separate part of that. Is that touching on senses, or is that not?
I think the bit that it does is that it takes away the fear factor, so that then it frees people up to be more free on the board. Because it's same with anybody who's going skiing for the holidays. But when you can fall well, you've got the social emotional side of it, of feeling like a failure. But as soon as you realise that that's not a failure, that's not a failing. It's how you learn. It's how you grow. It's a great way to be accepted into the community, because you've actually got past that point. And also the fact that it's not as scary as you think it is, and therefore you feel less fearful of falling into the water, falling into the snow, falling onto the snow, and feeling that sense of pain, physical pain, not shame, but the physical pain. And it's actually, that's not as bad, especially in the water. The water is very, it's very soft to fall into. And it's very, it's just a lovely thing to do. So to have that fear taken away reduces anxiety in the system, which means that the senses can then process better and do what they need to do to get the integration of the body and the brain, and increased coordination for a better surfing experience. So it doesn't affect the social emotional, but it does affect the anxiety that comes from the fear of falling in.
Wow, cool. Right, we're going to have to come back to that in the new year because I'd like to go further with that one. But I wanted to at least touch on it briefly because I literally interviewed Laura last week about this project, which is awesome. Right, so moving on to Christmas, we said we talk about Christmas. So there are a few areas we could go here. Where do you want to start?
Well, it could be that, I mean, if we're happy to talk about it this week, maybe even next week, or some more questions come in for next week, we've got decorations, we've got presents, we've got food, we've got visitations, we've got how to pace your life, we've got sitting still over the meal times, how to handle presents, and what seems like rejection. Should we pick one? Why don't you pick from the hat, pick one of those and see where we start?
Let's start with the stereotype. Let's start there. Generalized stereotype. It's the mum who does everything and she's buying the presents and she's trying to get the house sorted and look after the children and make a nice home. You got in-laws. How does that mum in that stereotyped role, how does she not get that overload, that burnout of there's so much going on, I cannot now cope? What strategies can she employ? And then, we can all learn from that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's a sense of overload, even just for her, we kind of start back at the beginning of December normally for the planning. Often, if there are more people coming around, we don't take note of how exhausting it could be. Like your Guernsey trip, there was a lot going on. There's a lot of demands on you, and we need times of rest. We need times of settle. We need times where we know we can relax. We need times of retreat. And we don't often factor enough of those in over the Christmas season. So it will be schedule out, an hour, 2, a day, an afternoon, where you actually say that if someone says, oh, I just fancy popping round, or do you want to come round to the family to ours? It's like, I'd love to, but I can't make it on that day. And the reason why you can't make it is because that's your time set aside. It's not because you're not meeting somebody else. So that there's no sense of lying. It's just, I can't make it on that day because you have scheduled out that time to make sure that you have enough time for everything that you want to do. So planning ahead and realizing that if you've got a busy Christmas Eve, you have a quiet Christmas Day. If you've got a busy Christmas Day, do you really need to see the relatives on Boxing Day? Can you move it a day or two after so that you give yourself space in between? And certainly if your children are part of that overwhelm, that they will need times to regroup. And it's okay. It's kind of give yourself permission. I give you permission, if you need someone else to say that actually I am busy. And you are busy recuperating. So that would be the first one. Also, see how much you can plan the week before Christmas Day itself. So there isn't the turkey and the broccoli and everything to be done on Christmas Day itself. Yeah, you prepare it the day before if you can, or the week before. If you've got the finance to buy, I think people would already be there anyway. They'll go and buy the ready-made bits and pieces. But if you can't, then preparing it a day or two in advance. And again, it's that planning, it's that organization, or get a friend who may be brilliant at organizing. If you are completely useless and that's not your gift, you do not have the gift of administration, you might have somebody who has the gift of helps and then can come in and just help you plan that time, but making sure that you can retreat and do something for you, whether that be going for a jog first thing Christmas morning, whether that be just putting your headphones on and having your own quiet time or time of peace, listening to something, putting a do not disturb sign on the door, whether that be for you or whether that's what another family member needs to do. We have to up our assertiveness, I think, over the Christmas season. We can mumble by during the year, but Christmas will increase. The pressures of Christmas can put the stress up to a point where it's much easier for everybody to lose it more or to feel the overwhelm of the experience.
Yeah, I suppose it's easy to be very, very busy doing, but we need to be busy also being on occasion through that period. And I love your idea of the gift of the helps. I love that. We all need someone who's got the gift of helps, don't we?
We do.
It makes me think, though. I mean, you and I, we've both got a meeting after this. we schedule time in, and we would do that normally. That would be, considered quite reasonable for us to book a time and say, right, from this hour we're busy, and then this hour we're busy. And I don't know about you, but I tend to have hour slots because then I can have a bit of time. I can go and get a cup of tea, or I can go and have a bit of time to myself, or I can do a write up or whatever I've got to do. And yet it hits the season of Christmas, and we throw everything that we possibly know out the window. No, I tell you what, we won't have breaks. We'll just go flat out until we fall apart.
What are we like, honestly?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I suppose what we can do actually in these 2 weeks, we can sort of move through Christmas, because we're just at the planning stage in this conversation now, and we can move through to the Christmas day and the parents. We'll just move kind of, I suppose, chronologically through the Christmas period to deal with the senses. And one of the things that I remembered was some friends of ours, when they had children, I think by their second child, the grandparents were up in arms. What do you mean you're not going to come and see us? And they said, look, we now have 2 children. We've got a third on the way. If you want to see your grandchildren, you know our address. Come and visit us between these hours. Well, what do you mean you're not going to come and see us with the grandparents? Yeah, but we got 3 kids and you don't. And they basically said, we'll be here at Christmas. If you want to see us, you know where we live. Because they were going through the motions of going to the houses and going to these grandparents. And then it's those, if you've got a broken family, you've potentially got 4 sets of in-laws now to try and factor in, which is even more than 2. And so they said, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be at home for Christmas because we've got small children. And it's too much to load the car, get everything in, charge to see you for an hour and charge back home. If you want to see us, come and see us.
That is amazing. It takes an awful lot of strength to do that, though. And sometimes you feel as though you're being rude, but we have to do those things. And it's that gentle assertiveness. You're not being aggressive. You're not being unloving. You're not saying that you don't want to see them, because you really do. But the realities of young children is a perfect example. It's like, oh, crumbs. No.
Right. So plan what you can as early as you can and get other people involved, because that's going to reduce any load that you're going to have to. So prevention is better than a cure, right? So the more that you can do early, the more help you can bring in, the less that we're going to end up having to get to dealing with and sorting. So we've talked about how the stereotypical mum, and she's flat out. And I like the fact you said, have your permission. And Lord Jackson says it's okay to have time out. I think that's important though, isn't it? Because there's pressure on what we are expected to do. And like we were joking, but we kind of ignore our sensory needs, don't we?
We do. And just as a slight, only with that sense of permission, because the biggest thing when sometimes I do feel as though I need to give permission because people don't know where they get it from. And it's just like, well, if no one else is giving you permission and you won't give yourself permission, well, take it from me. But it's also the whole Father Christmas Santa thing that freaks children out, some children. And it's like, you don't have to do it. You really don't. And if you're a Christian, it's like, some people say it's lying to your children. It's just like, well, why would you choose to do that? Some people say it's a game, and that's fine. I don't want to cause anybody's hackles to get up as to what they feel or what they don't feel about Christmas, Father Christmas, Santa, and that side of things. But it's also permission that you don't have to do those things if that, again, doesn't align with who you are as a family, or the fact that it is freaking your child out. Because the idea of having someone, come into your house, and the whole thing is just quite freaky. So, but I'll leave that bit, because we'll go on to other things, because I think if we're planning ahead and presents, actually, this is often, I'd love to go that one, because this is often one that people don't think, and they think that they need to save the presents for Christmas Day. If they do presents at all, and not everybody again has to do presents, but if you'd like to do presents, sometimes the expectation and the countdown to Christmas raises anxiety so much that if you could choose once a week, maybe you start at the beginning of December. And if there's so you give from one grandparent on this week, give from the next grandparent on the next week, or the next day, or something like this. So that it's not this massive build up to Christmas Day itself. You actually kind of drip feed and you enjoy this season of Advent. The other thing about presents is about wrapping, and the fact that some children you can't see. I mean, most of us, we wrap presents because we think it's a lovely thing to have a surprise. That really stresses out some individuals too. So if you like to wrap it, maybe you could take a picture of what the item is and put that on the little tag. So you actually have a picture so that it just reduces the stress, reduces the arousal levels, reduces the uncertainty of it all, that they can see what it is. And then they can enjoy unwrapping because they're not so anxious about what's going to be inside it. They know what it is, or they've actually chosen the present beforehand. And then they're just provided with what it is that they've chosen, and they know what it is that they've chosen. Some people, if you don't have the right, it has to be the right kind of box, it has to be the right kind of whatever. So just make sure that you do tune in to those things that you would really pay attention to again during the rest of the year. Don't just throw it out the window because it's Christmas. If you know they need certain things in a certain way, honor that right the way through the whole Christmas experience, whether it comes to presents or decorations or any other things. So I think the drip feed of the presents is a really nice one. And also that they know what's actually inside the present, whether it be that you don't wrap it in the first place, or that you put a little picture on the outside, or that they've chosen it with you.
I think we've all seen that. I know I have in certain family gatherings where the children have so many presents. They have the gift. You can see the grandparents more. They've got my gift now. And they open the present, throw it to the one side and go on to the next one. And it's almost as though opening the presents is the only thing that matters. And the other advantage of drip feeding gifts to children is they actually get to enjoy the thing in front of them, which means if the person's sitting there watching who's purchased that, all of a sudden they can be part of that. But if it's just this massive present, and I've seen it only rarely, the children then are just throwing it. And I remember seeing on eBay one time a whole bunch of presents from a grandparent who said, I gave this to my grandchild. They didn't care, didn't want it, so I'm sticking it all on eBay. And it was really tragic reading the description of clearly not a dysfunctional family, but a very dysfunctional Christmas because there was too many gifts, too much, I suppose, in a sense, sensory-wise. There was too much for the child to try and possibly absorb. It's not about a selfish child so much as they've only got 2 hands and 2 eyes, and there's only so much they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if it's easier if folks want to stick to Christmas and then just drip feed it after Christmas, on those days, but I think drip feeding presents is a really lovely one.
Great. So we've tried to deal with the mum who's overloaded. We've tried to deal with the child who is overloaded, so we're now drip feeding the gifts, and we're getting towards Christmas. As that build up increases, you've got, if your children are in school, then you're going to have issues because there's lots and lots of ramping up in schools. Those teachers are winding the kids up as well. You've got in the shops, you've got everything going on. And then let's go just back to Santa Claus for a moment, because one year I played Father Christmas to children, and I had many, many children who were screaming, being forced onto my lap in a full Santa suit. I was slightly traumatized because it was the grandparents who wanted that photo. And I had a traumatized, screaming, crying child for a moment. And what surprised me, I think, was this was a children's centre organised. So it's council, this is professional staff. And yet they were like, oh, just keep going for this photo of a screaming child. How can we help parents with grandparents? Let's deal with it coming down. How can the parents, how can they help their grandparents not to interfere in such a way that's going to actually traumatize the child?
Yeah. So I think one of them to have those conversations beforehand. It is so hard, but it is broaching the question. Some people don't have that assertiveness like that other family that you were talking about, which is beautiful, hard to do, but important, and I think would be very helpful for the whole family. And it's having those conversations beforehand about saying, right, okay, what are we going to do about Father Christmas this year? Maybe if they've had a bad experience in the past, then that might give them enough to decide, actually, that's not going to be helpful. We don't need to do it this year. If you think your child is going to have an issue, though, then I just really hope that people would have the opportunity to talk and say that, can we have we want to give you what you would like, and we want to honour you as grandparents. We want to you as family members. We want to understand why it's important to you. So if you give them the opportunity to let you know why it's important to them, or ask them, what is it that's important about Christmas? What are the things that you have to hold on to in order for you to have a good Christmas? What does that look like to you? And you might find that actually that the photo with Santa, it doesn't come in there. If it does, well, maybe you could get someone who photoshops, who's very good on Canva, who might be able to create something. So it's having those conversations that you're really not sure how it happens, and maybe have those get out clauses. And if it's really important that you start the process, it's like, okay, we'll go to the grotto together. But actually, if he really isn't happy, then we would like to be able to take him away and know that we've tried, but we'll try and get you a photo somehow. And then I would just take a photo of him and stick something, in the background. But I would also say to any churches, any children's centres, anybody who's listening, that the pressure that we put on people, I think we ought to have if it doesn't suit, we need to have a get out clause for families who go, because we hear it. I hear it all the time that experience is not helpful, is not pleasurable, and it's a modern day Christmas. It's not a Christian Christmas, but it's a modern day Christmas, and it's how we help people to navigate that. But conversation, having a get out clause, having another option. And even if these places themselves would have a quiet space where they take a picture of the child, and they have they have a Santa on a green screen or something that they can put in, that there must be different ways, technology wise now, if it's such a compulsion that it has to be done, how will services do that? But definitely do not. I think it's awful when we traumatize the children that way because of our own needs or expectations. But it's totally understandable as well. And you don't know how somebody's going to react until they're in that position, unfortunately. And then partly it's a bit late. But if we can forewarn, then we are forearmed much better.
We might have to finish here before we break up any further.
Right, okay.
So if you've got any questions for Anne, and I'm really sorry about the internet stuff this week. We've moved the location for the recording, so it's not working as great, but we adapt, we evolve, we carry on. Right, so if you've got questions for Anne about Christmas, family gatherings in general, but we're looking at Christmas this week and next week, then email them to me, hello@pure247radio.org, hello@pure247radio.org. Put those questions to me by email. I'll put them to Anne. And can you let people know your website so they can get hold of you?
Yes, indeed. AnneLaureJackson.com. ANNELAURE Jackson.com. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you for your time. Sorry for the connectivity issues. We will fix that.
I know you will.
For next week. These things come to stress us and test us, and it's fine.
It's fine. It will be.
Right, thank you, Anne, and we will speak to you next week some more about Christmas.
Pure 24/7 Radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.